Well, welcome to another episode of The Art of Feminine Negotiation. I'm so glad you took time out of your schedule to join us here today, and I'm going to make sure we make it worthwhile for you. You're in for a treat. Today, we're going to be talking with Scott Abbott about redefining power, something you know I am all about. I'm calling the episode Calm, Clarity, and the Courage to Walk Away. So let me pose a question to you. What if the most powerful part of negotiation isn't what you say, but instead how prepared, how grounded, how aligned you are before the conversation even begins? Well, we're going to be digging into that today, talking about negotiation in a way that challenges a lot of the conventional wisdom, especially the idea that confidence has to come first. Our guest today, Mr. Scott Abbott, he brings decades of experience working with leaders in high pressure environments. And he's going to be offering a very refreshing perspective that clarity, structure, and self-alignment are what actually create the confidence, that influence, and allow you to get sustainable outcomes. So welcome, Scott. It's great to have you here.
Cindy, thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, and for those of you who may not know him, Scott Abbott, he's a leadership coach, he's a strategist, he's a best-selling author, and he helps leaders navigate, I guess you'd say, complexity with clarity and with intention, which all of you who know me know I am very big on intention. And his work focuses on practical, some real world tools that are going to strengthen your decision making, emotional intelligence, and sustainable performance. One moment at a time, because that's how we have to get through life. So, Scott, most people think negotiation starts, when the conversation begins, right? When you're in the boardroom. And I know you see it differently. Where do you believe the negotiation actually starts?
That's a great question. As profound as this is going to sound, you don't result into results.
Hmm.
You step into them moment by moment, as you said. So I think to show up at your best, there's a lot of work that happens beforehand, right? Just like the work that goes on before the accolades, before the accomplishments, before you're physically there. And that's where we believe intention coupled with good systems and structure, alignment, and having ownership of what you need to do to be the best version. That's where it starts. We like to call these, in technical terms, leading indicators versus lagging, right? The actions and activities you need to do to generate the results that you want to generate.
And I think often we don't show up with enough intention. And I want to turn to clarity right out of the gate because I think that's sort of the key in a lot of ways. So what happens when people enter negotiations without that clarity? Even if they appear confident and they think they're like, I know what my argument's going to be, but if they don't have real clarity, what do you really think happens?
Well, I think confusion and frustration and anger and just a whole host of dynamics can happen when one, let alone both parties, don't approach the dialogue or the opportunity with good boundaries and what I like to call agreement-based commitments. So inside of our solution, we have a framework called CLEAR. And it's to set basically the ground rules, the bylaws, the inputs, the outputs, if you will. And CLEAR is the word itself, choosing to strive for clarity. Are we clear? Crystal, ideally.
Yeah.
But it's also an acronym, Cindy, and it stands for collaborative, logical, empathetic, authentic, and resilient.
Nice.
And if at the front of these dialogues, even when they're with ourselves, if we're clear and we do our best, and God knows we're not perfect, so we stumble and fumble, but if we do our best to pursue clear, both the pursuit of the definition and the acronym,
Yeah.
chances are everything gets a little bit better and the outcomes are more real and tangible than if we just sort of made it up as we went along.
And what are some of those things that we want to be looking to get clarity about? Because again, I think we're so conditioned to see our focus as really narrow. I know in my experience, people don't even think about, who do I want to show up as? Who do I want to be? Who are they likely to show up as? What are some of the things you like to see clarity around?
Yeah, well, I think it depends. It depends on the situation, the opportunity, the challenge. Is it specifically clarity around how should we communicate with each other? How should we set our goals? How should we ensure that we're our best selves? So I think first and foremost is setting the right goals and expectations and objectives. Not to call businessy, we call those OKRs, objectives and
Yeah.
key results. And to get there, we do need, again, even in life, we do need structure and process. And I use the word systems a lot just to help make sure that we've got the right guardrails. To your point, that we're talking about the right thing. I see this a lot. We've all heard the tomato. Well,
Yeah.
which is it? Ideally, we want to get that kind of definition. Now, I'm having a little fun with that one, but my answer is to your point. That's why agendas are so important.
Yeah.
That's why having clear goals and expectations and outcomes is important, right? Because if we don't have that, then everything's a little bit funky,
Yeah.
and that's not a good way to start, let alone a good way to expect a positive outcome.
Yeah, because if you don't have a good start, your chances are things are going to go sideways or downhill in a hurry. And
More
so
often than not,
you've
yeah.
mentioned the structure. So let's talk a bit about, because I know you talk about structure creating the confidence rather than the other way around. So can you unpack that a little bit for our listeners?
Yeah, well, just you just said the word like pack, right? Imagine if your parachute's not packed properly.
Yeah.
And I'm serious, if your backpack and you're climbing up the mountain's not packed properly. So we always want to be equipped, and it's best to be equipped up front. It's even more intelligent in terms of, I talk about in the Moments book, architect, builder, custodian. Instead of buying a bunch of stuff or investing in products or building this or doing that, make sure on paper it calculates. On paper, it sounds intelligent that your product and your strategy and your goals line up with your budget and your balance sheet. You follow me? And then you build, and then you make sure that it's clean and maintained and good stewardship, and you're making it better than it was before. So there's a sequentiality to it. And yeah, if you're not ideally prepared, now let's be clear, we don't expect perfection,
Yeah.
progress over perfection, but we want to have our proverbial ducks in a row.
Yeah.
We want to be poised and mindful and walk in with our awareness at its peak. And then to be others oriented, we also need to be, again, empathetic and make sure that they know where we're coming from and vice versa.
Yeah. And you can't be grounded when you're not prepared, right? I mean, it's problematic. If you wondered, I was laughing when you said about your skydiving, your parachute pack. A friend of mine was just telling a story recently about his first time skydiving, and he's getting around, and they're like the guy's 10-year-old daughter sitting there packing the parachutes. And he's like, oh my God, what the hell are we in for? So your analogy was quite apt, frankly. And let's talk on that preparation piece. Like, how does preparation and being more intentional about having a structure reduce, at the very least, reduce emotional reactivity in negotiations, especially high stakes negotiations?
Sure, sure. Well, I think it's fair that for you to be confident, ideally, especially if it's negotiations and we're dealing with other people, we want to win-win, don't we? We don't want to win-lose.
Yeah.
And to do that, if we work from the same agenda, we have mutually shared and agreed upon goals and commitments and expectations. And if we're just courteous about it, especially in this world of AI and automation and technology, the good news about that, in my opinion, is if it's used right, it actually liberates us to be better humans.
Yeah.
It gives us more time, seriously, to listen and to discern and to dialogue. If I'm now generating about 10 to 15 extra hours a week because I'm more productive, I choose to use that time to be more humane and to spend more time listening and learning and paying attention. And I think if that could be a two-way street, if not three or four-way, a
Yeah.
roundabout probably, especially because we have so many other people typically in conversations than just one other person in negotiations and dialogue and
Yeah.
communication and class. That's hard. It's hard to get everybody on the same page. It's hard to always be consistently, together. And,
Yeah.
and that's also recognized, I think, right? The Pareto
Yeah.
principle, 80, 90% clarity, facts, figures, and 10, 15%, because I believe you. I trust in you. I trust in what we've built so far, that where there's ambiguity and uncertainty, we overcome that because we believe that we've done the right work to make sure that those gaps are not going to get us into trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to really put a pin for our listeners in that piece about listening and I'd be interested in your experience about this, Scott, because I feel in North America, we have not been taught to listen well. We're not conditioned to listen well. We sort of reward those people who come in and actually, I think for a long time, we believe that the person who's talking the loudest and the longest in the room is sort of the strongest leader. And when in fact, in my experience, the opposite is true. What are your thoughts on that?
Totally agree. And that took me longer than I wish it had to learn that.
Same.
Um, you
Well,
know,
no wonder it takes us long because we are so
yeah,
conditioned to, most of our entertainment industry puts that up. We reward and define success based on this more chest beating kind of energy. And
yeah.
And I think we lose a lot. And I want to go back to that sort of confidence piece, and particularly vis-a-vis women, although, I think this crosses gender, but I think many people, but particularly women given conditioning, negotiate from a place of, seeking permission rather than that grounded kind of confidence. So first, how can someone tell which mode they're in, and what tips do you have to get them into a place of more authentic sort of confidence?
Yeah. Well, obviously, I can empathize and I study, and as a student and a teacher, the dynamics for women in leadership and ownership and just in dialogue is not the same.
Yeah.
And I think though what can and should be promoted and embraced, and you said it at the start of the show, I use the word poise. And poise is a big word, but it's kind of small. And just being prepared,
Yeah.
being mindful, to your point, if your tendency as a human is to get a little loquacious, to use that term, and to either go one extreme or the other, right? Use commitment devices, be those jewelry or pen and paper, something to help you stay on track to a habit you either want to embrace or avoid, right? In terms of
Yeah.
eye contact and presence and physicality. And we certainly know we live in a superficial world that sadly perception is more often than not reality. And so the importance to have that intestinal fortitude and to hang in there. And I think if you really are committed to alignment and a good outcome, even when you stumble and fumble a little bit, to your point, I see most people, and I was briefly in journalism, broadcast journalism in
Okay.
school.
Yeah.
And silence to me was deafening, right?
Yeah.
You couldn't sit there at the desk. Uh-oh, awkward.
Yeah.
Got to talk. No, actually, it's not easy, right? It takes about 90 days to start or stop a habit, depending on how habitual it is.
Yeah.
But silence is good. And again, it's okay. And I think the more back to poise, you're ready and prepared, the easier it is to both overcome and deal with conflict.
Yeah.
And the alpha in the room, if you will, that really is not on your Christmas card list coming up because you struggle with that relationship, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, silence is great. Silence is so undervalued, I think, as a
Mm.
society, and we do get very with the exception of radio. I just saw a clip recently on a show. I can't remember what it was, but the guy, you're sort of a radio host, and the guest suddenly is just sitting there quiet, and he's like trying to wave signs at him, and finally he takes a break, and he goes, "For God's sake, man, it's radio. Silence is a kiss of death here." So, now, in circling back, just for our listeners who don't know what you're talking, when you talk about those commitment with the jewelry and that, can you give an example of what you mean by that?
Yeah, it's actually I don't love the word hack, but I'm going to use that to keep it
Yeah.
modern, right? It's a hack to just help make sure that if you've got a habit, a goal, an objective, something you want to do, most humans, me especially, I'm just not naturally good at remembering it or doing it. And so, a bracelet, frankly, a tattoo, insignia, tangible asset that's front and center in your visual
Yeah.
to remind you to start or stop doing, you should start or stop doing to be a better version of yourself.
Yeah.
Those are commitment devices.
Yeah, I love that. And that is a great little hack for our listeners there. So if you've got a habit of talking too much, now you've got a strategy to be able to help you deal with that. And, we were talking about that sort of permission or that hoping for approval. What shifts internally when somebody moves from that hoping for approval kind of approach to taking your approach and standing in clarity, right? Being able to have that absolute self-trust when you're going into a negotiation.
Yeah, well, I know easier said than done. One of my favorite, and I don't know who said it first, but I think this applies to most of us who we really think about what I'm going to say. We measure ourselves by our intentions, but we measure others by their actions.
Hmm. Oh, I like that. Yeah.
And so if you let that bake in, and if you
Yeah.
really let that sort of just get into the very nooks and crannies of your being and use that as what I call again, just one of your SOPs, your standard operating principles, not procedures,
Yeah.
and realize that, yeah, we're going to stumble and fumble. We're not going to always say the best things, right? And hopefully we have people in our lives and we know that we need to decompress. And a big word in business we use is compartmentalize, right? Don't take it personal or that was then or you're not there yet. but those are important. Those mind gems, and it's a big reason why Boss Up Moments is in the world. In addition to the tangible spreadsheets and the physical assets, how are you through EQ and just your self-awareness and confidence overcoming these inevitable hiccups and our giddy ups, right? The good and the bad, and just maintaining that poise, that decorum to know that if you are committed to being your best, excellence is a pursuit. It's not a reality. Let's be clear, right? And if you are committed to working together for the right reasons, when those inevitable bumps happen, right, you're that much more confident to continue and to just recognize that while you might not have been who you were or said what you wanted to say, it's okay because, as I like to say, the destination is the journey.
Yeah.
And you ain't done journeying until you're no longer on this earth. So you keep
Yeah.
moving and growing and becoming the better version of yourself, even through the things that aren't going well.
Yeah. It's funny as you were saying that, I was thinking when you use the word destination, to just clarify, a Pilates instructor that I had before, she'd say like, bring your head to your knee, and she'd go, that's a direction, not a destination. So, and we could apply that to what you're saying as well. So the excellence is the direction we are always striving to move in, knowing that we're not going to hit
Cindy,
that.
that's job security for all of us until we're
Yeah.
no longer physically here, right? If you're not growing, you're dying. And
Yeah.
so job
Absolutely.
security to maintain this alive being that we have.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned EQ, Scott, and I know like emotional intelligence is often framed and people think of it as a personal trait. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, you approach it more systemically. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
talk a bit about
I
that.
mean,
How do
own
those
it.
strong frameworks actually amplify our emotional
Yeah.
intelligence?
Well, I'm going to go get back to AI and technology and systems. And a lot of people don't know this. The more rigorous you are on the use of good systems and structure and protocol, counterintuitively, it actually liberates you.
Yeah.
I go back to, again, if you're liberated 10 more hours a week, let's put that into you. How do we help you become more emotionally confident? How do we help you, get your head around the difference between perception as reality and how to this conversation we've had so far? Just up your game in terms of poise, in terms of having that humble confidence to set good boundaries and know that you're becoming the person you want to be, right? That line that says we create ourselves, that's rubbish, right? You build yourselves.
Yeah.
You don't find yourself.
Yeah.
You follow me? So
Yes.
yeah, I think today, especially with AI and the preponderance of data and information, it's now time for us humans to really apply the things that only humans have. You ready? Like we're doing eye contact and sensory and touch and taste and feel and tone. And we got to be careful because there's always extremes on both sides, right? You don't want to go too extreme because then it feels like you're being manipulated or you're trying to manipulate. So you
Yeah.
got to find that groove.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think EQ and IQ today, they should be in balance. But because tech and AI specifically is giving us so much on the IQ, that should give us more of an incentive to just raise our EQ
Yeah.
as much as we can and to be the best versions of ourselves on that level, not just on the smarts
Yeah.
level.
Well, and I'm glad you said about not going overboard. I know when like Chris Voss's book came out, everybody was on about the mirroring to the point where it was counterproductive, right? Every time somebody would do this, they'd lean forward to do the chin moment. Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of practice and skill to be able to mirror effectively with it seeming natural in the conversation. So for our listeners, always keep that in mind. Err on the side of authenticity for sure. And when you were talking before as well about that win-win versus that win-lose mentality, I think one of the other sort of more traditional models, we always associated effective negotiation with having power over others rather than power with, which I do not subscribe to. And I think that traditional negotiation equates power with dominance or persuasion. How do you define real power in negotiation?
Hmm. That's packed, that question.
Yeah, loaded.
I'm just say, like a lot of things, it's an and both. I think it's the literalness of it, right? What are the T's and C's, the terms and conditions? What is and or will be, again, the outcomes, the criteria, the parameters, right? But to that as well, when delivering that, negotiating that, deciding on what's good, what's not, what needs to be changed or modified, again, I'm going to come back and say you've got to have that humble confidence. And the
Yeah.
more grounded you are in you and the faculties that you have, and everything from your presence to your ability to listen, right? We have two eyes, two ears, and one mouth, your, your physical poise. And
Yeah.
I'm not talking about I'm not talking about superficial. I'm not talking about looks or hairstyle or clothing. I'm just talking about the physical manifestation that, and we both know it. We've seen people who walk in a
Yeah.
room that basically are dressed like a bum, but they got something about them. There's an aura
Yeah.
and they have a presence. And more often than not, you ready? It's because they say less, not more.
Yeah.
And so I just think again, it's this duality, it's this fusion of EQ, IQ, good material. And what I mean by that is make sure the paperwork's right,
Yeah.
be ready, be prepared, do
Yeah.
the best you can, set good ground rules, good agreement-based commitments on what we're doing, how we're going to do it, and what we expect to get done. And then just be present,
Yeah.
to your point.
Yeah, and to plug your clear model, I assume, like for me, I would think that gives an incredible power, an edge in a negotiation. When you apply a model like clear, right? When you get that clarity, when you show up with empathy, when you bring that kind of intentionality to the table, there's an inherent power in that as well. So, no, I
And it's actually it's very courteous too, by the way, right? So I do this in my coaching sessions.
yeah,
I'm also a little silly. I have 5 squishy toys.
yeah,
Literally, you can throw at people.
yeah,
One's an elephant for the elephant in the room. One's a squirrel for a look squirrel tangent alert. One's a bull for no BS. One's a horse, no lobbying, right? And so you got to have some fun. But when you put that clear framework in front of everybody that says, hey, can I ask a favor? And you write it down,
yeah,
then you're able to have some fun with say, party foul. You know,
yeah,
you're really kind of, and then though, this is the thing I think about life today, though, too, Cindy, right?
yeah,
And we know we're in a world that sometimes tends to either, shut you down or you're talking too much, right? Cancel culture and echo chambers and
yeah,
all the things going on social media. But I do think it's fair to have rapport and give and take. So if somebody says, one of my moments in the book, by the way, is on safe. We've
yeah,
all heard, I don't feel safe. Well, what is it that makes you feel unsafe? And if somebody can't explain that, Cindy,
yeah,
especially if they're in the same team, the same company, and the
yeah,
same goals, that's not fair.
yeah,
You can't just shut down back to EQ and say, well, I don't feel safe. Well, where's the saber-toothed tiger?
yeah,
Who's yelled at you? What's going on?
yeah,
Because if we don't understand how to overcome this, guess what? We're going to continue with
yeah.
this vibe, this dynamic, and that's not fair. So it's a two-way street on being prepared and also the give and take when it comes to a situation that's not following the clear guide rules.
Yeah. Yeah, nice. It really resonated when you said about that it's not fair. And that's whether it's defining safe or anything, right? If you were in a negotiation, I'd be thinking my husband has done this, he'll go like, oh, I've made sacrifices. I'm like, okay, name one. Well, so if you're going to make statements, be able to back them up.
Well, one of our favorites that is trust but verify. And yes,
Yeah.
it works just as good in the home,
Yeah.
especially with us men, as it does in the boardroom. Yes.
Yeah. And for our listeners, as you know, it's always right because they think of all of this as a negotiation. And Scott's already alluded to that, being prepared for your negotiation starts with that negotiation with yourself, right? Negotiating who you want to show up as, being that best version of yourself when you're showing up with poise. And when you say that, the word that keeps coming to mind is grace, right? I think people who exude that power, there's a certain grace about them. And I don't mean gracefulness. I mean just that certain
And you
energy.
want to know how you make it even better, Cindy, is when you combine grace with grit. And
Yes.
on the invert, if it's grit, make sure you have grace. You put those two together, it's like peanut butter and jelly and milk and
Yeah.
cookies. Just go together very
That's a
well.
great book title right there, right? Grit and Grace.
Well, it's actually it's in the Moments book, Back to the Power of Grace and Grit. And by the way, it's one of my tattoos. That's probably TMI to you, but this
I
is this
love
is all
that.
about grace and grit. We believe in redemption. One of
Yeah.
my favorite words is yet. I'm
Yeah.
not there yet. I don't feel this way yet. We don't have that yet, right? It's not that it's never going to happen,
Yeah.
but I think in today's dynamic world today, we got to have that give and
Yeah.
take. We've got to have the grace and trust but verify, like you just talked
Yeah.
about your husband. And then we've also got to have the grit, though, because this is work.
Yeah.
We are professionals.
Yeah.
We've got to deliver. We get paid to do certain things, and there's a reality we have to own up to.
And I love that reframe. And again, for our listeners, I remind you as well, when you're getting locked in certain patterns, see how Scott did that there. Using something as simple as that yet is a powerful reframe, or call it, perception. The perception that you show up with, you can change your perception about things that will give you more power, both personally and when you show up at the table. And I know at the introduction, we talked about being able to walk away, and that's something that you focus on. So explain for our listeners, like, why is the ability to be able to calmly walk away often the strongest position that someone can hold?
Yeah. Well, I just love the concept of humble confidence.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a left or the right. I like kind of somewhere in the middle. And you talk about the yet. here's another one for everybody, right? The concept of I get to versus I have to.
Yeah.
And if you know that walking in, you can walk away, because sometimes when you walk away, one door closes, two more doors open
Yes.
up.
Yeah.
Now, we got to be careful. There's certain things we might have to put up with, assuming it's not anger and hostility and physical or emotional verbal abuse, right? We got to make some money. So we might have to have some relationships. And one of my moments is the word likable, right? I hear this all the time, especially coaching. Yeah, but do I like him? Well, right now I'm kind of like a pilot on a plane.
Yeah.
Likability is not your number one concern. I gotta take this thing off and land it.
Yeah.
So let's focus on that first. In time, you'll like me, but good coaches, just like good colleagues, don't always pander. They don't tell you what you always want to hear, right?
Yeah.
I'll just tell a story real quick. I went to a major event the other day, and I was a speaker at it. And I showed up, and the president's, and I'm not coaching them. I just did a talk,
Yeah.
but very sincerely, he had some like leftover breakfast on his face.
Okay.
And I walked up, and he's got his team around him, and nobody had told
Oh
him.
God, like the emperor's clothes.
And so I went up and I said, hey, how you doing? Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. And he just turned around and goes, I can't believe none of you told me this.
Yeah.
And I said, I can't believe you did either. So did I irk him? Did I push him? Right. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm pretty public in the world. I'm a
Yeah.
challenger. I'm a coach. So I'm going to
Yeah.
teach a facilitator. So if things aren't going well, right, it's not to hurt you. It's not to harm you. It's
Yeah.
to help you. And so I just think there's that line
Yeah.
that we ideally, and sometimes you're going to be misunderstood when you're
Yeah.
leading and you're doing what you need to do. Not everybody's going to get it.
Yep.
And it's not always easy being who you got to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, comes back to that authenticity piece, right? I often joke and say, you'll love me or hate me, but you'll always know where you stand. So, and I want to circle back because that clarity really struck me when you were talking about walking away. Because as you were saying it, I was thinking about, in my legal career, I've seen good deals. People walk away from deals that made sense for them and they were right there and they walked away for the wrong reasons. And I've also seen the opposite where they keep fighting and working and wanting the deal so badly that they're giving up more than they should. And I think that goes back to that clarity and that clear model you talked about. Doing that homework will help you avoid knowing when you can walk away calmly and with that combination of grit and grace where it makes sense rather than digging in too long or walking away when it doesn't make sense. And speaking of that, what's one negotiation that you believe people need to start having with themselves before they ever sit across the table with somebody else?
Yeah, well, I'll answer that, and I'll also complement your last point, right? There's an old approach called the Ben Franklin, and you may not have heard this up in
I haven't heard
Canada.
that term. No, not for not in that
Ben
context.
Franklin. And what Ben Franklin would do is say, okay, we have a decision to make, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah.
And so basically, you draw like a scale. And on the left-hand side, you put your pros. On the right-hand side, you put your cons. And you basically do like a checklist manifesto.
Sure.
But you're not done yet.
Yeah.
And then once you put your criteria down, boom, 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 let's just say you've got 5 over here and 3 over here. Well, that means the scales of objective credential says go this way versus this. Your gut says here, my heart says here, but when I put the math down, I put the engineering down, right? I put how it impacts other people. And then once we get that, then we put a rating on it, 1 to 10 or A, B, C, D, right? And so my point of this one is one of the best concepts that's hard for a lot of people who might be naturally talented and an entrepreneur and go for it is this concept of filtering, right? We should put things through filter, especially if they're expensive or they could cause problems. You follow me? So there's always do I need to filter whether I should have the chicken on my salad today or the salmon? That one's not too hard. But if it's a decision in business, work, and life that requires an investment and or can put you and others either at harm or in an uncomfortable position, you've got to run it through a filter. You've got to do some assessments. Easy, quick way is the Ben Franklin. This is where AI comes in very handy, right?
Yeah.
So just, again, and on the other hand, like we said earlier, don't overdo it. Progress over perfection. I typically believe about 80 to 90% data, logics, facts, and 10%, that's where your experience and your credentials and your opinion comes into play, right? Make a call and move forward. More screw-ups happen because people don't make decisions because they're waiting for too much or too little than if they make a decision with, the right amount of information.
Yeah. Well, and I like that you're looking at that multiple factors as well, because I find so often, like to use a simple analogy, it's like, if people are thinking, I want to buy a pair of shoes or whatever. Well, oh, you're charging X, I can get them for, however much cheaper. but they don't factor in that that one that's cheaper is on the other side of town. And it's going to cost them more than the difference in gas to get there, right? So, I mean, yeah, oh yeah, I could get this appliance cheaper. Yeah, but one has no warranty, the other one does. One has whatever, right? So looking at multiple factors, don't get yourself blinded. And just
Absolutely.
closing. So for someone who's listening, who's facing an important negotiation in their life right now, whether personal or professional, what would you say is the, and you've probably touched on it, but what would you capsulate as the most important work that they should do before they sit down for that conversation?
Be prepared. And I know, really, no,
Yep.
no, no doubt, right? But sometimes, as my dad likes to say, common sense is not so common.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
often, and I believe most things in business, work, and life, it's like checkers. It's not that complicated. We make it more
Yeah,
complicated.
that's true.
Now, I think to the best of our abilities, we should think like chess players, right? Two moves ahead and look at the entire board and zoom in and zoom out and have filters, right? That's ideal.
Yeah.
So I would just say again, be back to some concepts. In fact, one of the concepts that I hear a lot that people denigrate is imposter syndrome and fake it until you make it. I think there's something to be said about that, right? You got to move forward. You got to get inertia. You don't get momentum without a moment.
Yeah.
And in that moment, if you have it, do something with it. Make it a verb, not a stationary noun.
Yeah.
So I would just say preparation, planning, and as we like to say, get your ducks in a row.
Yeah.
And then again, back to which I know you believe in as well, that the charter's win-win. So
Yeah.
back to clear. What about them?
Yeah.
Where are they going? And when in doubt, you're ready. Again, I'm going to sound incredibly simple, hopefully not simplistic. Ask.
Yeah.
The power of questions, the
Oh,
power of prompts, the power of I do not know. Can you help me?
yeah.
It's amazing. Even when you think you're supposed to,
Yeah.
and you've got everything in your favor, just humble thyself and say, help me with this one,
Yeah.
and share with me what you think in addition to what I think.
Oh, I'm so glad you got the chance to get that in because we haven't really talked about that. And I could not agree more. I think, the art of curiosity appears to be a lost art and we need to get it back. Show up with genuine curiosity. A lot of our global issues, I think, would be reduced if we showed up with a little more curiosity. And Scott, I normally like to end by asking, what's one of the greatest mindset shifts you've had? Doesn't have to be about this business or anything about negotiation or leadership, just one of those aha moments that makes you think about something differently, changed your life.
Well, I have a lot. I've been very blessed to see some good things, and I've certainly failed and done a lot of dumb things. And we already said it.
Mm.
I think one of my mantras is you're not growing, you're dying. But that concept of yet. I'm not there yet. You're not there yet. So have some grace, have some grit. And you see what I did there? I
Yeah,
kind of have one moment and one concept can stir a lot of the other parts of the drink, right?
absolutely.
The
Yeah,
straw that stirs the drink.
yeah,
But I just think if you give yourself some grace, but you also have the grit to say, I want to be better, not because it's just about making more money or being the boss with two S's or what have you, right? Because it's the right thing. It's the right thing to be
yeah,
humbly confident. It's the right thing to be poised and prepared. It's the right thing to try and strive for where you want to be. And it's a journey. And that journey should never end until, the good Lord says, hey, it's time to
yeah,
move off from this earth and go someplace else. So that would be my concept, my hack,
yeah.
is to find that balance between grace and grit and realize that we're always evolving and we're emotion and you owe it to yourself and others to get to that next level, knowing that that's a never-ending pursuit.
Well, I'm glad I've never had anybody. I love that you recognize that when you turn your mind to one mindset shift that you've had, it ripples, right? Because as you get intentional about thinking about that, it makes you think about other things. And so for our listeners as well, it's ironically one of the reasons I always end with what's one of the greatest mindset shifts you've had. Because when we think about a mindset shift, it multiplies. There's a beautiful ripple effect. So where can people learn more about you, Scott?
Well, on the interwebs, hang out quite a bit on Instagram and LinkedIn and X. Scott Abbott ABC, back to architect, builder, custodian. And then I've got my own personal website, scottabottabc.com. And if people are interested to find more about Boss-UP, our coaching solution academy, whether they're an owner, an entrepreneur, a builder, a leader, or a coach, you can check us out at boss-up.coach. And through that, you can click on our academy if you'd like to learn more about being a coach.
It sounds awesome. And for our listeners, we'll make sure to put that in our show notes. So don't panic if you're in the middle of something and you couldn't jot that down, but you're interested. Check out the show notes, make sure to follow up. And Scott, this conversation, I think, it's a powerful reminder that negotiation isn't about force or performance. It's about that clarity, that preparation, the quiet confidence, I guess, that comes from self-alignment. So thank you so much for joining us today and sharing some really grounded, practical insights for our listeners. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Cindy. Thanks for doing the show and sharing and caring as much as you do. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no, likewise. And for our listeners, as always, thank you for joining us today. And if this conversation sparks something in you, make sure to subscribe if you haven't done that. But also, I always remind you, give the gift of sharing. Share this episode with somebody who can benefit from this message, which is frankly just about anybody, because there's some concrete, practical applications on how you can negotiate better. And all of life is a negotiation. So if you're ready to expand your influence and elevate your voice or renegotiate an area of your life that's been holding you back, make sure as well to come and find all the ways that we could partner at artoffemininenegotiation.com. And remember, every moment is a negotiation. So show up with presence, lead with purpose, and never forget your power was never the problem. Until next time, take care.